No need to buy a new battery. With one simple trick, I brought a seemingly dead watch back to life instantly. Or maybe you're tired of the hassle and expense of taking it to a shop for a simple battery swap. Don't worry, we've all been there. Welcome to today's video, where I'll walk you through an easy, money-saving way to replace your alarm clock battery right at home. No fuss, no stress. In just a few minutes, with a couple of simple tools, you'll have your clock ticking perfectly again. Ready to give it a try? Grab a cup of coffee, press play, and let's get started. Be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment to share how it worked for you. Both watches had completely dead batteries. The hands were frozen as if they had given up, but I decided to try restoring the old batteries instead of replacing them. This clock has stopped working because the battery ran out. If you don't have a spare battery or you've run out of the right kind, try this trick of mine. The first step was taking out the multimeter and checking the voltage of each battery to see how much charge remained. Pinpointing the exact voltage helped me determine which cells were still recoverable and which ones required more aggressive treatment before attempting to bring them back into service. The results showed that the voltage had dropped far below the operational threshold, indicating that the electrochemical reaction inside had nearly come to a halt. This method should only be used in truly urgent situations or when you don't have a replacement battery available, because a used cell, even if temporarily revived, will never return to its original performance. It is essentially a stopgap solution that allows the device to keep running for a while, not a full substitute for a brand new battery. These are all the old batteries I've used, and not a single one still works. For the first method, I'll use 2 tomatoes to revive the battery. This fruit, which seems suited only for cooking, actually contains mild acids that are strong enough to reactivate the oxidized surface of the battery's electrodes. I hollowed out some of the seeds inside the tomato to create a small pocket just big enough for the battery. The moist, acidic flesh comes into direct contact with both terminals, providing a favorable environment to clean the surface and stimulate the electrochemical reaction back into activity. I then sprinkled a bit of salt inside the tomato. Once dissolved in the tomato's juices, the salt forms a stronger electrolyte solution that allows ions to move more easily and enhances the cleaning of the electrode surfaces. The combination of natural acids and salt speeds up the restoration process, giving the weakened battery a chance to regain a bit of voltage for temporary use. Next, I wrap the battery in a layer of aluminum foil. The foil acts as an auxiliary electrode, helping distribute the current more evenly and increasing the contact area with the electrolyte inside the tomato. When the foil and the battery touch the salted tomato flesh, the electrochemical reaction intensifies, supporting a more effective reactivation of the weakened cell. I then positioned the battery so that each terminal made contact with separate tomato. This setup created two distinct electrolyte points, allowing the weak residual charge in the cell to interact more effectively with the acidic, salted environment. By isolating the positive and negative ends across two tomatoes, the ion flow became more stable and the surface activation occurred more uniformly, giving the battery a better chance to recover a small but usable amount of voltage. After a few minutes, I remove the battery for testing. At this stage, the goal is to see whether the brief exposure to the acidic, salted electrolyte has managed to loosen oxidation and reactivate a portion of the battery's internal chemistry. After removing the battery, I needed to clean its terminals. I used a bit of WD-40 together with fine grit sandpaper. The WD-40 helps loosen any remaining oxidation, while the sandpaper gently polishes the terminals without removing too much material. This combination restores a clean, conductive surface, allowing the revived battery to transfer current more efficiently once it's installed back into the watch. I then measure the voltage again. This second reading shows whether the cleaning and electrolyte exposure have produced any meaningful recovery. It was now reading 1.4 volts. That jump in voltage confirmed that the surface oxidation had been reduced and the internal reaction had partially revived. Although 1.4 volts is still below the ideal level for a fresh button cell, it is enough for many small quartz mechanisms to start running again, at least for a limited period. I installed the battery back into the watch to test it. The moment it made contact with the terminals inside the watch, the second hand began to move again, proving that the revived voltage was sufficient to bring the mechanism back to life. This confirmed that the temporary restoration had worked and the watch could continue running. Even if only for a short while, the movement remained stable once the battery settled into place. The second hand ticked at a consistent rhythm without hesitating or dropping beats, showing that the restored voltage was not only enough to start the watch, but also sufficient to maintain steady operation. I then moved on to a different method for reviving depleted cells. While the tomato and salt technique relies on mild acids and electrolytes, this next approach focuses on restoring conductivity by addressing internal resistance directly. I used a piece of solid copper wire. Its rigid single-core structure makes it ideal for creating a stable, direct bridge between the battery's terminals during the revival process. I cut a short piece of the wire and stripped the insulation from both ends. Exposing the bare copper allows for direct metal-to-metal contact with the battery terminals, which is essential for creating a control bridge. I shaped the copper wire slightly to fit the task. If you also have any damaged phone charging cables, make use of them. I cut away the white and green wires because they don't contribute to carrying power. In most USB cables, those two conductors are reserved for data transfer, not for supplying current. Removing them leaves only the red and black power lines. I then measure the output voltage of the charger. Using the multimeter set to DC mode, I touch the probes to the red and black wires to confirm whether the power adapter was still delivering a stable output. It normally outputs 5 volts, but because I wasn't connecting it to any device, the multimeter showed 6 volts. This slight increase is typical for chargers operating without a load. Now I connected the red wire to the shaped copper piece and the remaining black wire to the battery's negative terminal. This configuration creates a controlled, low-current path from the charger through the copper bridge. The idea is not to recharge the cell, but to momentarily push a very small stabilizing current through the internal chemistry. This brief stimulation can help reduce polarization, reactivate sluggish material on the electrodes, and lower internal resistance just enough for the battery to regain a small, usable portion of voltage for short-term operation. When I touched the copper wire to the positive terminal, the goal was simply to give the cell a brief, low-current impulse. When I measured the voltage again, the multimeter now showed a clear 1.5 volts. This increase indicated that the brief electrical impulse had helped reduce internal resistance just enough for the cell to regain a bit more usable potential. Although it still wouldn't perform like a new battery, reaching 1.5 volts was a strong sign that the revival method had taken effect and the cell was ready for a temporary test run. I placed the battery back into the watch. As soon as the terminals made proper contact, the mechanism started moving again, this time with noticeably stronger and more consistent ticking thanks to the restored voltage. The watch showed no hesitation or intermittent stops, confirming that the revived 1.5 volt reading was enough to drive it reliably for the moment. Both methods proved surprisingly effective for temporary battery revival. The tomato and salt approach excels at cleaning oxidized terminals and gently reactivating the electrochemical surface, making a simple, low-risk option when no tools are available. The copper wire impulse method, on the other hand, addresses internal resistance directly and can yield a slightly stronger voltage recovery when handled carefully. While neither technique replaces the reliability of a new cell, each offers a practical way to squeeze a bit more life out of depleted batteries and keep small devices running in a pinch. These methods are not meant to replace a proper new cell, but they show that with a bit of creativity and basic materials, you can extend the life of everyday items instead of throwing them away immediately. It's a small reminder that resourcefulness often unlocks extra value where we least expect it, especially in DIY projects like this.